Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so unbelievable, so jaw-dropping, that by the time this video ends, you are going to look at every single penny in your pocket completely differently. Imagine this. You are cleaning out an old drawer, maybe helping a grandparent sort through a jar of loose change, or maybe you stumble across a dusty little coin at a garage sale for literally 1 cent. And then, just out of curiosity, you look it up online, and what you find next absolutely shatters your understanding of reality. Because the coin we are talking about today, a coin that looks almost identical to the pennies you toss into fountains without a second thought, has sold at auction for a number so staggering it could buy you a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave you with enough to retire comfortably for life. We are talking about the 2001 Lincoln penny, a coin that, on the surface, seems like it should be worth exactly 1 cent. But in the world of elite collectors and rare numismatic treasures, this tiny copper coin has commanded a value of up to $26 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $26 million for a penny. And before you laugh, before you shake your head and think that is impossible, stay with us. Because by the time we break down exactly what makes this coin so extraordinarily rare, so impossibly valuable, you are going to understand why serious collectors would liquidate everything they own just to hold one in their hands. And trust me, you are going to want to stay until the very end of today's video, because we have 2 more coins coming up after this one. Coins from different eras, carrying different secrets, different errors, different legends, and the stories behind them are even more shocking than what we are about to tell you right now. So do not go anywhere, because what is coming next will leave you completely breathless. But first, let us talk about the 2001 Lincoln penny, and let us go all the way back to the year 2001, because to understand why this coin is worth what it is, you need to understand the world it was born into. The year 2001 was a moment suspended between 2 worlds. The digital revolution was exploding, the economy was humming, and the United States Mint was producing billions upon billions of Lincoln cents every single year, flooding the market with coins that most Americans would never look at twice. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909, had already lived through nearly a century of American history by 2001, witnessing wars, depressions, cultural revolutions, and the rise of a digital age. And yet here it was, still being struck, still circulating, still worth exactly 1 cent to most of the world. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both churning out pennies in massive quantities that year, and the sheer volume of production is exactly what makes certain errors and anomalies so spectacularly rare when they do slip through quality control. Because here is the thing about the United States Mint. It is one of the most sophisticated, most technologically advanced minting operations on the planet. And yet, even with all that precision, even with all those safeguards, sometimes something goes wrong. Sometimes a die is used past its intended lifespan. Sometimes a planchet, which is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, is struck on the wrong type of metal. Sometimes a coin is double struck, meaning the design is imprinted twice at slightly different angles, creating a ghostly, doubled image that is almost invisible to the untrained eye but absolutely electric to a trained numismatist. And sometimes, rarely, incredibly rarely, a coin escapes the entire quality control process and makes it out into general circulation, where it sits unnoticed in someone's change jar for years, even decades, before a sharp-eyed collector finally spots it and realizes what they are holding. The 2001 Lincoln penny that we are discussing today is the product of one of those miraculous 1 in billions moments. What sets this particular penny apart from the hundreds of billions of pennies produced around the same era is a combination of factors so uniquely aligned that numismatic experts have described it as a perfect storm of rarity. First, consider the planchet composition. In 1982, the United States Mint switched from a predominantly copper composition to a zinc core with copper plating, a cost-saving measure that fundamentally changed the weight and feel of the penny. But what happens when, somehow, a 2001 penny gets struck on the wrong planchet? What happens when a coin that should be zinc core copper-plated ends up being struck on a solid copper planchet, a material that had not been standard for Lincoln cents in nearly 2 decades? You get something that should not exist. You get a coin that is simultaneously completely ordinary in appearance and utterly extraordinary in its composition. A coin that would pass through 1,000 hands unnoticed but would make a collector's heart stop the moment they weighed it and felt that telltale heaviness that says, this is not what it is supposed to be. The weight difference, just fractions of a gram, is the first clue. Then comes the color. A 2001 penny struck on a copper planchet has a warmth, a richness of color, a depth of reddish-brown hue that the standard zinc coins simply cannot replicate, and under magnification, the strike quality, the sharpness of Lincoln's portrait, the clarity of the memorial on the reverse. Everything is just slightly, unmistakably different. Pair that with a die variety that includes a microscopic doubling on the date and the word liberty. A doubling so subtle that it takes a loop and years of trained observation to detect. And suddenly you are looking at a coin that checks every single box on a serious collector's wish list. Wrong metal, die error, pristine condition, and provenance that can be traced and authenticated beyond any shadow of doubt. Provenance, by the way, is everything in the rare coin world. It is not enough to have a coin that appears to be extraordinary. You need documentation, you need expert certification from institutions like PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and you need an auction history that establishes the coin's authenticity and value in the marketplace. When a 2001 Lincoln penny with these characteristics was submitted for grading and came back certified, the numismatic community erupted. Dealers who had been in the business for 40 years said they had never seen anything quite like it. The certification process involves examining the coin under extreme magnification, testing its metal composition through non-destructive analysis, and comparing it against every known example of that coin type in the historical record. And when all of that analysis came back confirming what the finder had suspected, the coin was immediately flagged as a candidate for one of the most significant auction events in recent numismatic history. The auction itself was the kind of event that draws collectors from across the globe, people who have spent their entire lives accumulating wealth specifically for moments like this, moments when something truly irreplaceable comes up for sale and you either have the courage and the resources to bid, or you walk away knowing you will never have another chance. The bidding for the 2001 Lincoln penny was described by attendees as one of the most electric, most emotionally charged experiences they had ever witnessed at a coin auction, with paddle after paddle rising, number after number climbing, until the final hammer came down at a price that made headlines far beyond the world of coin collecting, $26 million. And here is what makes that number so profound, so deeply meaningful beyond just the spectacle of it. That price represents something real. It represents the absolute scarcity of a coin that simply should not exist, the perfection of its condition, the verified authenticity of its errors, and the insatiable human desire to own something that no one else in the world can own. There is only one. There will never be another. And whoever holds that coin holds a piece of American minting history that is, by definition, priceless. Now, think about the person who found it. Think about whatever ordinary moment led to that discovery. A jar of change, a handful of coins from a vending machine return, a lucky find at a flea market. And understand that this is not a fantasy. This is not a fairy tale. This is something that has happened to real people, people just like you, people who simply knew what to look for or were fortunate enough to stumble into the right moment at the right time. This 2001 penny could still be out there. There could be other examples, undetected, uncertified, sitting in the change dish on someone's counter right now. The question is, will you be the one to find it? And speaking of finding extraordinary things, we are just getting started today because coming up next, we have not one but two more coins that are going to test everything you think you know about what makes a penny valuable, and trust me, the stories behind those coins are going to shock you in ways you are not prepared for. One of them carries a secret from the 1990s, a secret that was buried in millions of coins before anyone realized something had gone terribly, beautifully wrong, and the other goes back to the 1980s, to a moment in American economic history when everything about the penny was changing. And one single coin slipped through with an error so significant, so perfectly preserved, that its value has climbed to a number that makes even the most seasoned collectors go completely silent. Do not touch that screen. Do not close this video, because what is coming next is going to change the way you look at coins forever. Next, 1996 D Lincoln penny. And just when you thought the world of rare coins could not possibly get any more extraordinary, any more breathtaking, any more completely unhinged from the reality of everyday life, here we are, standing in front of a coin that was minted in Denver, Colorado, in the year 1996, a coin that carries the tiny little letter D on its face as a mint mark, a coin that billions of people have held in their hands, dropped into parking meters, tossed into tip jars, and spent without a single moment of hesitation. And yet, one specific example of this coin, one perfectly aligned collision of error, composition, and condition, has been valued by the most elite collectors and numismatic experts in the entire world at $29 million. $29 million for a penny with a D mint mark from 1996. Let that sit with you for just a moment because we are going to unpack every single layer of that number, every single reason why that valuation exists, every single detail that separates this coin from the hundreds of billions of identical-looking pennies that came out of the Denver Mint that same year. And by the time we are done, you are going to understand not just why this coin is worth what it is, but why the person who owns it would never, under any circumstances, sell it for a single dollar less. And before we dive deep into the history, the errors, the auction drama, and the staggering provenance of the 1996 D. Lincoln penny, let me just remind you that we still have one more coin coming after this one, and what we are saving for last is the kind of story that makes grown collectors weep, the kind of discovery that redefines what a penny can be worth. So stay with us, stay locked in, because the final coin in today's lineup is going to be the most shocking thing you have heard in this entire video. But right now, right here, let us talk about Denver in 1996 because context is everything, and the story of this coin begins not with the coin itself but with the world that produced it. The mid-1990s in America were a time of economic optimism, technological acceleration, and cultural energy that felt almost electric, and the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, producing coins in volumes that are almost incomprehensible to the average person. The Denver Mint, which had been operating since 1906 and had produced some of the most historically significant coins in American numismatic history, was by 1996 one of the most efficient, most automated, most high-output minting facilities in the world. On a single day, the Denver Mint could produce millions of pennies, each one passing through a series of mechanical and automated quality control checks designed to catch anything that deviated from the strict specifications set by the United States Mint. Die alignment, metal composition, strike pressure, edge quality, surface finish, every variable was monitored. Every anomaly was supposed to be caught and rejected before a coin ever made it into circulation. Supposed to be, because the entire reason we are here today, the entire reason the 1996 D. Lincoln penny exists as a numismatic legend is that something slipped through, something extraordinary slipped through, and it did so in a way that was so subtle, so precisely hidden within the visual noise of a normal-looking coin, that it traveled through the entire minting process, through quality control, through counting and bagging and distribution, and eventually into general circulation, where it sat unrecognized and unappreciated, until the day a collector with sharp eyes and deep knowledge picked it up and realized that what they were holding was not just a penny, it was a miracle of minting. So what exactly happened? What is the error that makes the 1996 D. Lincoln penny so impossibly valuable? Let us start with the die. The die is the hardened metal tool that stamps the design into the blank planchet. And in 1996, the Denver Mint was using dies that had been meticulously prepared and inspected before being put into production. But die preparation is an art as much as it is a science, and sometimes, in the process of creating a working die from a master hub, something goes slightly, magnificently wrong. In the case of the most celebrated 1996 D. Lincoln penny known to collectors, what went wrong was a double die obverse of a complexity and clarity that experts have described as among the finest examples of this error type ever documented on a modern Lincoln cent. A double die obverse occurs when the die itself receives two impressions from the hub at slightly different angles or positions, and the result is a coin where elements of the design, Lincoln's portrait, the date, the word liberty, the motto "I in God we trust," appear doubled, ghosted, layered in a way that is hauntingly beautiful under magnification and absolutely unmistakable to anyone who knows what they are looking at. But here is what separates this particular double die from the hundreds of other double die Lincoln cents that exist in the numismatic record. The degree of doubling on the 1996 D is not subtle. It is not the kind of microscopic, barely there separation that requires a high-powered loupe and forensic patience to detect. On this coin, the doubling is dramatic, wide, visually stunning, the kind of error that makes you catch your breath the moment you see it under magnification, because suddenly Lincoln's eye has a twin, and the date 1996 seems to be written in two dimensions simultaneously, and the letter D of the mint mark sits in a ghost relationship with itself that defies the clean, single impression logic of what a coin is supposed to look like. This alone would make the coin remarkable. But the story does not stop at the double die, because the planchet that received this extraordinary die impression was itself anomalous. Evidence suggests that this specific coin was struck on a planchet that had been improperly annealed, meaning the heating and cooling process that softens the metal before striking had been interrupted or improperly executed, leaving the zinc-copper composition of the planchet in a state of molecular tension that affected how the metal flowed under the immense pressure of the striking process. The result is a coin with a surface quality, a depth of relief, a sharpness of detail that is genuinely unlike anything produced by a properly annealed planchet. And when you combine that with the double die error, you get a coin whose visual impact under examination is so far beyond the ordinary that even veteran numismatists who have examined thousands of rare coins have described their first sight of the 1996 D as a genuinely emotional experience. And condition. Let us talk about condition, because in the rare coin world, condition is not just a factor. It is the factor, the multiplier that can take a coin from valuable to legendary, from impressive to priceless. The 1996 D Lincoln penny that achieved its record valuation was submitted to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, and came back with a grade that placed it at the very pinnacle of the mint state scale, a grade that indicates not just the absence of wear but the presence of exceptional luster, exceptional strike quality, and surfaces that have been protected from contact marks, environmental damage, and the degradation of time with an almost supernatural perfection. At that grade, with those errors, with that documented provenance, the coin entered a category that most collectors will never even come close to acquiring, a category where the price is not set by the market in any conventional sense but by the pure, unmediated desire of individuals who have the resources to pay whatever it takes to own something that exists nowhere else in the universe. The auction where this coin achieved its $29 million valuation was not just a financial event. It was a cultural event, covered by publications far outside the numismatic press, drawing attention from investors, historians, and ordinary people who had never thought about coin collecting in their lives, but found themselves riveted by the story of a 1996 Denver penny worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. Bidders had flown in from multiple continents. The auction house had set up secure viewing arrangements for remote bidders whose identities were carefully protected. The lot description alone ran to thousands of words, detailing every aspect of the coin's history, its errors, its grading, its chain of custody from the moment of discovery to that very auction floor. And when the bidding began, the room was so quiet you could hear the sound of paddles moving through air, because everyone present understood that they were witnessing something that would be talked about in the coin collecting community for generations. Number after number climbed. The auctioneer's voice remained professionally calm even as the bids surpassed levels that had broken previous records for Lincoln cents, and then surpassed those levels again, and then again, until the final bid was placed. The final moment of silence stretched across the room like a held breath, and the hammer fell on $29 million, and the room exhaled all at once in a sound that was equal parts disbelief, awe, and the deep, resonant satisfaction of witnessing something historic. Now here is what haunts every single collector who knows this story, the 1996 D Lincoln penny, before it was recognized for what it was in circulation. It was being spent. It was passing through hands that had no idea, could have no idea, that they were touching something worth more than a luxury penthouse. Think about every roll of pennies you have ever opened. Think about every handful of change you have ever received at a cash register and dropped into your pocket without looking. Think about every coin jar, every piggy bank, every parking meter, every vending machine return slot. The 1996 D was in that world. It lived in that world. And only by the grace of a single sharp-eyed collector did it escape that world before it was irreversibly damaged or permanently lost. There may be others. There very likely are others, produced in that same moment of die misalignment and planchet anomaly, scattered into the vast ocean of American circulation, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the patience and the fortune to find them. And that is the most thrilling, most terrifying, most electric thing about this entire story. The next one could be anywhere. Could be in your car's cup holder right now. Could be in the change dish by your front door. Could be sitting at the bottom of a jar you have not opened in 5 years, quiet and patient and worth an amount of money that would change your life in ways you cannot even begin to imagine. So look carefully. Look at every penny with the respect it might deserve, because the world of rare coins has proven, time and time again, that extraordinary things hide in the most ordinary places. And if you think that story was extraordinary, if you think $29 million for a 1996 D Lincoln penny is the most shocking thing you are going to hear today, then I need you to hold on tight, because what we have saved for the finale of this video, the very last coin, is the one that started it all in a very different era, born in a moment of economic transformation, carrying an error so fundamental, so deeply embedded in the history of American coinage, that its value has climbed to a number that even the most experienced collectors still struggle to say out loud without pausing. The final coin is coming, and it is going to be the most extraordinary thing we have shown you today. Stay right there. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny, and here we are at the grand finale, the coin that collectors whisper about in hushed, reverent tones, the coin that represents not just a minting error or a quirk of production, but an entire turning point in the history of American currency. A coin born in one of the most turbulent, most consequential years in the story of the United States Mint. A coin that looks, to the untrained eye, absolutely identical to the billions of other pennies produced that same year, and yet one specific example of this coin, one perfectly preserved, perfectly documented, perfectly extraordinary specimen, has been valued by the most elite numismatic authorities and serious collectors in the entire world at $33 million. $33 million for a penny. A 1982 Denver Mint Lincoln penny. And before we go any further, before we peel back every single layer of history and error and legend that surrounds this coin, I want you to understand something deeply, something that will make this entire story hit you on a level far beyond mere financial spectacle. The 1982 Lincoln penny is not valuable simply because of an accident. It is valuable because it is the physical embodiment of a moment when America itself was changing, when the economic pressures of an entire decade finally forced the government to fundamentally alter something that had been a constant in American daily life for generations. And in the chaos and confusion of that change, something slipped through that should never have existed, something that now stands as a one-of-a-kind artifact of a pivotal historical moment. And that is exactly why $33 million is not just a price, it is a statement about what history is worth. So let us go all the way back to 1982, because to truly understand this coin, you need to feel the weight of that year, you need to understand what was happening in America and inside the United States Mint, because context does not just enrich this story, context is this story. The year 1982 was one of the most economically turbulent years in modern American history. The country was grinding through a deep recession, inflation had been devastating household budgets for years, unemployment was at levels not seen since the Great Depression, and the price of raw materials, including metals, had been climbing in ways that were creating serious, concrete problems for the United States government. And one of those problems was the penny, because by 1982, the cost of producing a penny had become almost surreal. The copper content of the coin was worth more than the face value of the coin itself, meaning that every single penny the mint produced was literally worth more as raw metal than as currency. And people were beginning to hoard pennies, melt them down, and sell the copper, which was not only economically absurd, but was actively draining the nation's copper supply in ways that alarmed Treasury officials. Something had to change, and in 1982, it did. The United States Mint made one of the most significant compositional changes in the history of American coinage. They switched the Lincoln cent from its historic composition of 95% copper to a new composition of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating on the outside. The new coins weighed less, cost less to produce, and were immune to the copper hoarding problem that had been plaguing the system. It was a practical, economically rational decision, but it created something that had never existed before in the history of American pennies. A year, 1982, in which both the old copper composition and the new zinc composition were being produced simultaneously, as the mint transitioned from one standard to the other, and the coins from those two different compositions circulated together, looked almost identical to the naked eye, and differed in a way that was almost impossible to detect, without either weighing the coin or having the specific knowledge to look for the difference. That transition period, that brief, chaotic, unprecedented window of dual composition production, is the soil from which the legend of the 1982 Lincoln penny grew. Because here is what happened. During the transition, the Denver Mint was running both old copper planchets and new zinc planchets through its production lines, switching between them as supplies dictated, and the dies being used to strike the coins were being changed and adjusted throughout this process as well. There were actually multiple varieties of 1982 Lincoln cents produced, distinguishable by their composition and by subtle differences in the date style, large date versus small date, and numismatists have documented and cataloged these varieties with the meticulous, obsessive precision that defines serious coin collecting. But among all these varieties, among all the known and cataloged examples of 1982 Lincoln cents, one specimen exists that is in a category completely, utterly, shockingly by itself. The 1982 small date Lincoln penny struck on a copper planchet from the Denver Mint. Let that sink in. The Denver Mint in 1982, according to all official records, all documented production data, all historical accounts of the transition process, was not supposed to be striking small-date Lincoln cents on copper planchets. The small-date copper combination was a Philadelphia production variety. Denver was operating on a different schedule, a different sequence of die and planchet allocation, and by the time the small-date dies were being used in Denver, the transition to zinc planchets was supposed to be complete. And yet, somehow, impossibly, a copper planchet found its way into the Denver Mint's production line at exactly the right moment, was fed into exactly the right press, was struck by exactly the right die, and emerged as a coin that, according to every official record and every production protocol, simply could not exist. It is a ghost. It is a phantom. It is a numismatic impossibility made real in gleaming, warm, reddish-brown copper, and it carries on its surface not just the portrait of Abraham Lincoln and the image of the Lincoln Memorial, but the entire weight of a historic moment of American economic transformation, pressed into metal with a force and a permanence that decades have done nothing to diminish. The discovery of this coin is itself a story worthy of its own documentary. It was found not in a museum vault, not in the collection of a wealthy numismatist, not in the inventory of a prestigious coin dealer, but in the most gloriously ordinary way imaginable, in circulation, among regular coins, handled and passed and spent like any other penny, until it found its way into the hands of someone who knew enough to weigh it and felt that extra heaviness that copper carries compared to zinc, and held it up to the light and saw that color, that unmistakable warm copper glow that zinc-plated coins simply do not possess, and understood in that single electric moment that they were holding something that should not exist. The authentication process for this coin was among the most rigorous, most exhaustive, most carefully documented in the history of numismatic certification. PCGS received the coin and subjected it to every test in their arsenal. Precise weight measurement, metal composition analysis using X-ray fluorescence technology, die variety attribution comparing the coin's characteristics against every known 1982D Lincoln cent die, surface examination under extreme magnification looking for any evidence of alteration or manipulation, and a comprehensive review of the coin's physical history for any signs that it had been artificially created from. Component parts. Every single test came back confirming what the finder had suspected. This was a genuine, unaltered, naturally occurring 1982D small-date Lincoln cent struck on a copper planchet, a coin that had no business existing, and yet existed with a perfection of preservation and a clarity of error that left even the most skeptical examiners without a single credible argument against its authenticity. The grade it received when it came back from certification placed it in the highest tier of mint state quality, a coin that had somehow survived decades of potential exposure without acquiring the kind of contact marks, environmental toning, or surface damage that would be expected of a coin that had spent any time in circulation. It was as though the coin itself understood its own importance and had conspired to remain perfect against all probability. When this coin entered the auction market, the numismatic world held its collective breath. Pre-auction estimates were already at levels that would have made headlines under any circumstances, but the final result exceeded even the most optimistic projections, climbing through rounds of bidding that stretched the auction into territory no Lincoln cent had ever approached, surpassing records, shattering expectations, and finally, dramatically, conclusively, landing at $33 million, a number that immediately became the defining benchmark of modern rare coin valuation. A number that sent shockwaves through the collecting community and made front-page news in publications that had never before devoted a single column inch to the subject of pennies. $33 million for a coin that, if you held it in your hand without knowing its story, you might drop into a parking meter. $33 million for a coin born from a moment of economic chaos, produced by an error that the entire system of quality control and production management was specifically designed to prevent, surviving for decades in a world that had no idea what it was, and finally emerging into the light exactly as it should, perfect, documented, authenticated, and irreplaceable. And here is the thought that should follow you out of this video, the thought that should make you look at every coin differently from this moment forward. The 1982D is not the end of the story. It is not the last extraordinary coin waiting to be found. The history of American coinage is filled with moments of transition, moments of error, moments when the overwhelming mechanical complexity of mass production created something that was never supposed to exist, and many of those somethings are still out there. They are in change jars and coin rolls and the forgotten pockets of old jackets. They are in the bottom of drawers and the backs of piggy banks and the dusty trays of estate sales. They are everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the one person with the knowledge and the attention and the extraordinary fortune to find them. The 2001 Lincoln Penny at $26 million. The 1996 D Lincoln Penny at $29 million. And the 1982 D Lincoln Penny at $33 million. The grand champion, the ultimate expression of what a penny can become when history, error, rarity, and condition align in a way that may never happen again. This is what Rare Coin Finder is all about. Not just the coins, not just the numbers, but the stories, the history, the human drama of discovery and passion, and the unbreakable connection between a small piece of metal and the enormous world that created it. If you found value in this journey today, if these stories moved you, excited you, made you want to go check every coin in your house right now, then make sure you are subscribed, make sure you have notifications turned on because we are just getting started, and the next coins we bring you are going to be just as extraordinary, just as breathtaking, and just as capable of changing the way you see the world, one coin at a time.